This video looks at further modifying the landing page in Service Operations Workspace. In a previous video, I added a visualization to this Service Operations Workspace landing page, but I added a thing called All Changes, and it was just all of the changes that were active grouped by the change type, emergency, normal, and standard. I had mentioned in that video that one of the defects of that solution, and I'll link the previous video in the description, one of the defects of that solution was that it did not take into account this my work and my team's work drop down over here. So it just always showed all changes regardless of what was selected over here. So what I did this time around was enhance that so that the visualization now takes into account this toggle. So if I go, actually it's not a toggle. I said that in the last video too. It's a drop down, I guess. So if I'm on my work right now and I'm seeing there's only one incident assigned to, one change rather, assigned to Able Tutor. If I go to my team's work, we see there are 12 changes assigned to Able Tutor. So this is the end result, and I actually already have it set up. I'll just kind of take you through how I did it. So if we go over to UI Builder here, and right now I'm in the sub page, right? So here I'm going to just fly over back to the main page, and this is home, and this is the variant that that we copied, that we duplicated from last time. And so we go edit content, and we're back in this sub page. So this was the visualization that was added, and this is all done in the last video. We added a container and the donut, and we configured this thing. But the difference is, in the last video, these were statically defined, so using the pencil here. And yeah, I don't want to click the pencil because it might, I don't know if it's going to get rid of what I did in the script. So basically, I replaced the data source, the metric, and the group by with the scripts instead of manually defining it or statically defining it with the pencil. So we can take a look at this. And basically, each of them is just a JSON payload. Here is the payload that is expecting, right? So there's a property is database view, allow real time, source type is a table. What the label is, I'm not sure where that's displayed, but right, what the label is a table or view name, right? So here we put the table name, and then the filter query, which here I defined this previously as filter, and then you have to give it an ID, which I called all changes. So then what I do is I just change, because everything else in here stays the same, right? Regardless of if it's my work or my team's work, but just the filter is going to be different. So I just define the two filters up here based on this api.state.groupMode. So this is the client state parameter that gets updated by this drop-down switch. And we'll take a look at that in a second. We'll also take a look at where I got this from, this definition of the data source. So here I'm defining my filter. I'm saying if api.state.groupMode is true, in other words, it's my team's work, then use this as the filter. And this is just an encoded query. So active equals true, and assigned to is not empty, and assignment group is dynamic, and here's the sysid of the dynamic definition. So these are just like any encoded query. The best way to do that is to go into the platform view. I can do that real quick. Go into the platform view, set up your assignment group is network, say, and assigned to is dynamic, me, Run that. And so now we have our query here. We right click that and we do copy query. So that's the best way to set up an encoded query. We copy that and just paste that into here with whatever we want. So the other one, so if it's not in group mode, if group mode is false, then we just do active is true and assigned to is dynamic, which is this one is dynamic me. Right. So then we just pass that value down to here into the filter query property, and that's it. And we return this entire JSON. Okay, so let's take a look at the group mode thing. How did I know that that was doing that? So we go to this component, and then we go to events. Yeah, here's the list. What is it that I am not sure where I got that from. I remember I did it last time, but if you look in the client state parameters, there is one called group mode, and it's a Boolean. So this one switches back and forth depending on what is selected here. And I wonder if this is, it might actually be in a client script. I think I looked at this last time. Anyway, I'm not going to be fumbling around in front of, on the internet here. I will take a look at that and try and put that in the description as to where I determine, how I knew that this dropdown was updating this client state parameter. I can't remember offhand. I'll have to look at it again. So that's how, okay, so that's the condition that we build everything else upon. Now the other thing was, where the heck did I get this, and this I actually do remember, data source, the JSON that we looked at here, how did I know what this was? So I did what I do so often and what everybody does in ServiceNow, which is just find something that's working and copy it. So the other, and I mentioned this in the last video, the other visualizations are all using these dynamic data sources, right? Based on a state, inc, assigned donut data source, right? So these are client state parameters. The problem is when you go into here, because I am not, this page, I don't know, I guess is not logged in or something as a user, it's not picking up anything. So if we go find that client state parameter right here, is assigned to, which one did I say that was? Yeah, is assigned donut, inc assigned donut.data source, inc assigned donut, right? So it would be in here, but I don't know what this is because it's empty right now. So I need to see what this is live and in action, you know, when I'm at runtime in here. And you can see, here's a little thing. So that's where we're going here. So what I did was I added a, let's see, where are we here? I think it's this one. Yeah, I added a rich text component, and then in the script, I JSON stringifies that client state parameter. So I say, well, first give me the data source, api.state.inc assigned to donut.data source, right? Then do the metric for this is for the other ones, and then do the group by. Right, and then output all of them with an HTML break in between each. So that gives me this, and this is where we get the definitions. So the first one, this is the data source. This one is the metric, and this one is the group by. So I just take these objects, and I go back to my visualization here, And that's it. I create a variable, data source equals, and then I paste that in. And then we can modify things as needed. So the only thing that needs to be modified in this one is the filter. So that just gets dynamically created there. So the script is great because you have access to the client state parameters, all the data sources, everything, and you can build a whole bunch of logic in here. And then I did the same thing for metric. And I will put these scripts in a blog post, and I'll link it in the description. So you don't have to go through all this pain and suffering. You can just copy pasta right in there. So this didn't need to be modified at all, but the deal is that if you use a script in the data source, then the metric and the group by also require a script. You can't define those manually. So I did that, and then group by, same thing. This didn't need any changes at all. I think the only changes it needed actually is you have to point it back to the data source, right? All changes. So this is where the ID is important. That's another thing I changed here. I call this data source all changes, and I believe this has to be unique. So that all changes is there, and the metric refers to that. Data source all changes, right? And then I also gave this its own ID, all changes metric. So I did make a couple of changes. And then the same thing here with the group by refers to all changes as well. And then the group by field is important because I ripped this off the incident. It was group by state, so I just changed that to type here. Okay, so that's where I got that stuff from. And then the last thing that we had to do was change the label. So you'll notice the other ones, if I'm toggling between, oh, see, and this is, I haven't reloaded this yet, so it's still got the old one. But if I toggle between my work and my team's work, it changes this incidents assigned to my team and incidents assigned to me. It's changing the title as we go. So for that, I just did the same thing with the script. Instead of making it a dynamic, a static input, I made it a script. And the script uses the same thing that the data source filtering uses. It checks the api.state.groupMode, saying, hey, if that's true, then make the title changes assigned to my team, and otherwise make it changes assigned to me. Really simple. So then that toggles back and forth. So that's pretty much it. The trick is defining these things with the script instead of defining it with the static input. I guess one last thing to note is, and I mentioned this at least in the article, and I think I mentioned it in the last video as well, is so these other ones, with the exception of the last one, I think, are all defined using data source, using client state parameters, right? Using data bindings instead of scripts. So the thing is with this, and this is what I mentioned last time, is it gets really complicated. With this thing talks to some script include, and it's updating. It's I took you all through it, the parade of scripts flowing from one to the other, cascading. So in order to kind of avoid all that mess, it's just easier to define the data sources with an API, a script, instead of using a data binding. But maybe there's a better way to do it. Like with everything in ServiceNow, there's multiple ways to do it, and there might be a better, faster way that someone can come up with, and would love to hear about it in the comments if you do. So that's it. I'll post this up, and I will put all the code in a blog posting so you can just copy it right in there.